Shadowrun, what it is and why it's so great, and also why it's absolutely the miserable and terrible and awful, and I don't want to do anything with it, except it's great. Shadowrun is a fictional cyberpunk setting with magic, fantastical creatures, body augmentation, megacorporations, and paranoid criminals set in an alternate future of our world. It is typically described as a mashup of Tolkien and Gibson, but Gibson hates it, and I don't think it's much like Tolkien. I much prefer to think of Shadowrun as a violent Ocean's 11 base mixed with Ghost in the Shell and Aragon with a sprinkling of both The Matrix and They Live. That may not have helped. Let's try this. Shadowrun is a world with the following people. An elf with cyber eyes and so many internal bits of silicon, metal, and synthetic organs that he's barely recognizable as metahuman. A young kid made entirely of nanites and mentally connected to a global wireless internet through technomagic. And a troll street shaman out of his gourd on Novacoke talking to his summoned dolphin spirit. These people are on the fringes of society, scorned by corporations, governments, and culture at large. They either have no real identity or are desperately trying to hide it. They are contracted as deniable assets by a Mr. Johnson, working for some shell corporation owned by the man to do something dirty that the man can't be seen doing. The players are the only ones who have the skills and desperation necessary to take the job. These criminals must work together using disparate skill sets to kill, steal, sabotage, and kidnap for enough money to pay rent and better themselves before the next mission. At any point, one of the group may betray the others, keeping the loot for themselves or selling out the team, unless the betrayed can get back at the betrayer. Shadowrun is a game about power, paranoia, and living your life as the only unlucky son of a bitch who gets to live out from under the corporate boot heel while slinging magic, summoning spirits, and punching things with metal arms so hard that they go flying. It is a kick-ass setting that is, as far as I understand, without contemporary. There are fantasy games and cyberpunk games, but there is only one fantasy cyberpunk game like this. If you want cyber magic without the rules, play some Powered by the Apocalypse game. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun, but I want my crunchy rules. To clarify, the rest of this video will be talking about the tabletop role-playing game version of Shadowrun. There are video games and books as well, and I've heard that some of the books are pretty good, and I've played like 5 minutes of one of the games. I've been impressed with that so far. But I'm the type of Steam gremlin who barely plays any of the games that he buys, so I don't actually know that well. Even concerning the tabletop, my only real experience is with Shadowrun 5th edition, but I will be referencing 2nd and 6th later on, as I do know some things about them. Every time you look through the books or the wiki, you find something new and interesting about the world. In the world of Shadowrun, 10 megacorporations, composed of hundreds or thousands of smaller businesses, hold most of the power, while governments and international organizations are only fractionally as effective. The power dynamic is such that sufficiently large corporations, run by organizations with extraterritoriality, don't have to follow the laws of the nation they are in, and actually have the right to their own armies, police forces, and judicial systems while they're on their property. Okay, imagine that Apple merged with Amazon, lost all of its morals, got in bed with organized crime, and then started to make artificial intelligences with reckless abandon. Most of their important employees are held on company grounds and can't leave unless accompanied by armed escort. Set that in Japan, add a heaped 3/4 cup of racism, and you get Renraku, one of the big 10 megacorporations. Okay? Cool. Now, imagine that half of the mining companies in the world got together with 2/3 of heavy industry and construction. A German dragon known for eating people owns 100% of that company's shares. It's called Seder Krupp. Most of these companies have insanely powerful dedicated hit squads. Ares Firewatch, the most famous and second most capable, is made up of the best of multiple nations' police forces, chocked full of chrome and given weapons and armor so rare that only research and development has another copy. Renraku's Red Samurai are such effective killing machines that, in one of my games, one of their ilk single-handedly killed an entire cartel's presence in South Florida without them ever knowing who or what was killing them. This man was kicked out of the Red Samurai because he couldn't keep up. Unlike Warhammer, which relishes in its insane and contradictory numbers, Shadowrun's power levels seem to scale appropriately. These hit squads are real potential in-game threats to runners that piss off the right people and get caught. Most corps are up to some real shady nonsense too. I'm not entirely sure about this, but I think that As Technology, the corporation that owns most of Central America and contests the rest, are actively sacrificing people to bring an evil god into the world. They also run the Walmart 7-Eleven Radio Shack hybrid thing where everyone buys everyday goods. So, every time you eat a microwave burrito or buy a toaster, you are actively helping about bring the end of the world. The public knows nothing about this because As Technology's public relations successfully paint them as downright philanthropic. While I'm naming off mecha corporations and their nonsense, Mitsuhama, another technology-heavy Japanese megacorporation, like Renraku, is known for taking technomancers, the Matrix brain magic people that I mentioned earlier, taking them off the streets and experimenting on them until they die. Most of their recent technological advances come directly from this illicit research. So next time you get some flash new cyber installed in your noggin from these guys, you are helping the accidental genocide of technomancers. These bits of lore and nuances to each corporation, how they present themselves, and what they want, change the way the game is played and allow for two missions with nearly the same prompt to grow wildly different because of the corporations involved. All of these corporations are, individually, the man. Entities so powerful and far-reaching that one mortal cannot properly comprehend their scale. They each have an undying hunger for power, and hatred for each other that they cannot slake in the daylight. For any corp to act against another in the open might provoke violent hostility or even open warfare. This is why Shadowrunners exist. To be the corp's silent teeth, ripping flesh and brains out of spite and hunger. When daylight arrives and you are long gone, the corp's bloody maw isn't quite enough to provoke war from the other corpse, openly. If you're lucky, you'll get offered another job from the company you hit as a retaliatory strike. If you're not, you'll get a strike team while you're sleeping. Shadowrun 1st edition took place in the 2050s, and the latest edition takes place in the 2080s and maybe into the 2090s. Their fictional world has evolved as much, if not more, than ours has, technologically speaking. This long history is rich with weird bits of information that make the world feel like a living place while you're in it. Here are some of the highlights of Shadowrun's history in no particular order. The Matrix. Their term for an internet that you can jack into and experience in an all-encompassing virtual reality, crashed twice. The first time it crashed, it led to the development of specialized hacking computers known as cyberdecks that allowed users to interact with the Matrix in a haptic virtual reality. The second time, it broke as a result of an artificial intelligence called Deus trying to become a literal god at the New York Stock Exchange and a doomsday cult fighting back with a virus called Jormungand. This crash allowed for an entirely wireless Matrix to be built out of the ashes, and gave rise to technomancers. Many of the people who were in virtual reality during the crash didn't wake up, and it's all but verified that their consciousnesses are sentient ghosts in the Matrix. The US annexed Canada, and then the Native American Indians did a great magical ghost dance to blow up several volcanoes in the US, threatening to blow up the rest unless they got their land back. They did! Then the South rose again, the elves declared Washington state sovereign elf territory, Japan took over most of California, don't worry it's independent now, a dragon called dibs on Northern California, they fight over parts of Cali, and a different dragon called dibs on Denver. Europe then proceeded to break like a window, in a hailstorm, in a trash compactor, and still hasn't quite recovered. There have been multiple corporate wars, and at least one dragon civil war. Australia is a nearly uninhabitable desert. Well, it's uninhabitable because of an eternal magic storm now, not just regular uninhabitable like it is in the real world. Anywho, self-replicating nanites were invented, proliferated, and then started taking over their hosts' consciousnesses. So now Boston is quarantined, and large swaths of the affluent population who were able to afford nanites are literally losing their minds because of these nanites. The world of Shadowrun is immense and interesting, and I love it so deeply. There are 6 main archetypes of play in Shadowrun, although a team shouldn't have 6 people in it because individuals can take double duty or roles can remain vacant without really gimping a team's capabilities. The Face, the first archetype on my list and my personal favorite, is a charmer who uses disguises, interpersonal skills, and contacts to bend NPCs to his will. He might be able to use these skills to double as an infiltrator, getting into secure facilities by talking to the right people and wearing the right getup. The Infiltrator uses either social or sneaking skills combined with breaking and entering gear to get into where he shouldn't be, to steal stuff, get intel, and, if the mission requires it, kill people. If you want to play a ninja, you will be doing Infiltrator stuff. The Street Samurai is a person who has so many combat augmentations and cyber limbs in them that they can throw cars, shoot with superhuman accuracy, or move with unrivaled lightning speed. We'll get to that in a bit. They are the main combat person. I also like how indicative the term Street Samurai is that the world is a Japan-dominated cyberpunk setting. The class isn't called warrior, brute, or fighter, and the nuance gives the term groundedness in the setting. As a complete side note, my favorite example of mechanical terms fitting the setting is human-occupied landfill's gray matter intelligence stat. Next up is the mage or magician, who can sling combat spells, heal, and astrally project themselves to scout areas and kill things in the astral. Do you remember that one scene in Doctor Strange where he's dead in a hospital and fighting a ghost as another ghost? Real neat stuff! You can do that in Shadowrun. Spells and spirits that mages summon are frighteningly powerful, even in terms of the nastiness Street Samurai can get up to. Naturally, mages are to be feared, and the adage, geek the mage first, is a Shadowrun shibboleth. Magic in Shadowrun is real neat too. Spells can be cast at variable intensity, and the more intense the spell is, the more likely it is to exhaust, incapacitate, maim, or even outright kill the mage. Many spells are not bound by distance, but instead by line of sight. Through glass and bounced off of mirrors counts as line of sight. So, as an interesting quirk, you can have one mage sitting in a secure room in a building, looking through a whole bunch of fiber optic cables, and that mage can go ahead and throw spells anywhere in the facility he wants through those fiber optics. Also, a mage on a mountaintop with normal optical binoculars can rain hellfire anywhere down below. If you blindfold that same mage, they're helpless. Hackers, either using brain magic or a tricked-out hacking computer called a cyberdeck, manipulate security systems, steal data, and brick hardware. They do all this while avoiding other hackers, intrusion countermeasure programs, and God, the Grid Overwatch division. Every hacking action you take sends ripples that the corporate court-sponsored Grid Overwatch division watches, and when God knows who you are smoked. A good hacker is essential to nearly any Shadowrun team. The last role, riggers, control vehicles and drones like extensions of their own body. Drone versatility means that you can have either an unkillable monster party bus with lasers and rockets that can fly like a helicopter with aftermarket rotors, or you can have a menagerie of small surveillance drones, flying gun mounts, and an anthropoid walker assassin drone that looks like a baby. Let me say that again. An anthropoid walker assassin drone that looks like a baby. Aw, give that cute little snuddly wumpkins a knife and call it Chucky. I have a lot of problems with Shadowrun's mechanics, but I want to hold off on those for the time being and focus on the fun stuff, and the stuff I really like about this system that I don't see in other systems. To determine who goes when in combat, most tabletops use something called initiative. Initiative in most systems is pitifully underwhelming when it's trying to make characters feel fast. A ninja on methamphetamines should be able to do more things in a turn than a tired tank, but most tabletop RPGs have each combatant act one after another on a line. The fast ninja will go first, but not more frequently. Shadowrun fixes this. Each person rolls a number of dice and adds relative modifiers to get a number usually somewhere between 8 and 25, but potentially as low as 3 and as high as broken rules will allow. I've theory crafted hitting 40. After every initiative has been rolled, the first initiative pass occurs, where each combatant takes a turn from highest to lowest score, subtracting 10 from their initiative count. After everyone takes a turn, the count starts from the highest score again, and scores below 1 don't get to go. There are more rules regarding interrupt actions that allow characters to take some actions outside their turn, but this is the gist of the system. Faster characters not only move more quickly, but more frequently. Shadowrun has a versatile and granular character creation system. I have never felt my creativity being stifled by character creation, and every single character concept has gear and qualities backing them up. Qualities are little boosts or detriments your character can have that usually affect gameplay in a meaningful manner and give extra flavor to every way you can build a character. Qualities come in both positive and negative varieties. Here are some of the really interesting ones. Tough and targeted. Some people think they would get a lot of street cred for offing you, so people try and kill you about once a month. Unlucky. Every time you really, really need something to go your way and spend a temporary resource to make that happen, there is a 1 in 6 chance that the opposite of what you want happens. Gremlins. Every time you try and interact with technology, you have a really high chance of either breaking something or glitching it in a weird, unfortunate way. Wanted. An organization is actively trying to hunt you down and kill you. Cyberpsychosis. Near total cyberware and Bioware have made you think everyone on Augmented is puny and you no longer care about them. First impressions. You always make a good first impression and do really well on a whole bunch of social encounters. Golden Screwdriver. Make your cyberdeck even crazier by installing modifications into it. All cyberdeck mods change how you play as a hacker in interesting ways, so getting another one makes it more wacky. There are entire books full of gear and lore. If you're a troll, you can choose from a selection of anti-tank small arms. There is a book full of bikes, cars, airplanes, boats, submarines, dirigibles, tiny insect drones, walker drones, and roto drones. The book also goes into exquisite detail about the available modifications for all of these and how to go about said modification. There's a book full of guns and suits. There's a book full of alternate metatypes so you can play gnomes, minotaur, cyclops, dryads, vampires, and changelings. Using some of the alternate rules for weird magical alterations to character metatypes, I was able to make a gator person. There is so much versatility and variability in this game, the gear that you can get, and the way you can make characters. I haven't even started talking about the game proper yet. Ugh. Alright, I described Shadowrun as Ocean's 11 a while back. That's because with proper planning and the right amount of luck, a team can pull off a great heist or job. However, one unlucky or stupid move will leave the team scrambling to fix mistakes and salvage the op. One more bit of bad luck, and one or more of the runners is bleeding out and might die. It's intense! There are only a few things in gaming that feel as satisfying as getting in and out, like ghosts, and few things that drop your stomach as quickly as getting found out. Let's just talk about fun things that happened in Shadowrun that might not happen in any other tabletop gaming system. The first mission my group got sent on went almost perfectly. We were supposed to retrieve a briefcase full of mystery from the local gang and give it back to the Mr. Johnson. We find where the briefcase is and who has it through one of the party's gang contacts and start scoping the place out. It's a full nightclub in a bad neighborhood, and the case is in an upstairs office where its contents are actively being sold to Yakuza badasses. There is much planning. Our sniper takes a position on a nearby roof, and our infiltrator climbs in through a window for which our hackers had temporarily disabled the alarm. The infiltrator and sniper kill one of the gang thugs with a silenced shot and katana slice, leaving his corpse on the floor. The infiltrator moves around the outside of the building to the window behind the gang boss in order to listen in. Then I, the face, get the bright idea. Why kill a bunch of people when you can just get someone else to do it for you? So, I walked up to the most stoned and gullible-looking ganger in the club and say something along the lines of, "The Yakuza are planning on double-crossing your boss. I think you should do something about that." To this he yells, "I knew it!" Gathers his compatriots and runs up the stairs right into the katanaed corpse on the floor from earlier. They rush into the boss's office and get absolutely wiped out by the Yakuza, who proceed to start running. The gang leader, seeing his minions get slaughtered and fearing for his life, hightails it out of there. He goes right out his secret back window emergency exit into our grateful interrogator, who promptly cuts the boss up like sushi, grabs the briefcase, and walks away with no one around to care. We leave, and the only people who could point to us being there are dead. It was a perfect run and felt great. Later in the campaign, exactly the opposite happened. In this run, we had tried and almost gotten away with a heist requiring a hacker, one fancy concert ticket, 2 comlinks, 1 eye-candy street samurai called The Wall, and me as the face. After several real-world hours of convincing a guy on the inside to just give us the stuff we wanted to steal, which also happened to be a briefcase, he up and dies to his wife's security system, leaving us with nothing to show for hours of work. Then, because The Wall was bored and had been telling us from the start of the mission that he could do it by himself, he just walked up, armed to the teeth, into the high-rise apartment where the thing was kept. A lone security guard started to attempt to stop him, but just to prove a point, The Wall, unholstered an Ares Alpha, a heavy pistol akin to a Desert Eagle, put it up to his temple, shot himself in the head, picked the smudge bullet from his cyber skull, and handed it to the guard, just to prove a point. The guard then let him walk into the elevator with no resistance. In order to give him some cover and reduce police presence, our hackers, spurred by other teammates' bad choices, decided to call in a bomb threat on all of the local hospitals. Because of our hacking shenanigans, the call came from Mars. The Wall did end up getting what we came for, and accidentally helped start an international incident by doing so. At the end of the game, when the Wall had military power armor, he just decided to soak 20 tank shells, and then the GM just had a dragon show up and stomp on him. The Wall's player was absolutely ecstatic. This dragon nonsense, guns, gangs, is the type of nonsense that Shadowrun helps provide. Other tabletop games have nonsense. Shadowrun has a different type of delectable cherry-flavored nonsense that I adore. Shadowrun's systems and environment also foster an excellent paragame, a game outside the normal game and normal game session. I guess it would be more correct to say that we never stopped playing the game, we just did a play-by-post game during our downtime. Many Shadowrunners are evil, and all of the living ones are paranoid, so just about every player would semi-regularly message the GM with secret plans, contingencies, and backstabs in the hopes they wouldn't get got. I played a serial killer, kidnapping people and selling their organs the entire campaign as my day job. Nobody knew, even though the serial killer showed up in weekly news articles over several sessions. One of the first things I did as a serial killer when they started investigating disappearances was go to the lead detective's house while he was at work, steal cigarettes and beer cans from his dumpster, and plant them at the next crime scene along with an AR holographic display and two-way audio communication. The running team wanted a bounty for the serial killer and investigated, taking the two-way communication from the crime scene. Note here that I planted the evidence in a high perch where I knew our infiltrator would look first. I was right, and good-naturedly cursed out when the infiltrator's player found out that I had exactly anticipated his actions. Later, our hacker and mage investigated all the crime scenes, found no matrix or magic signature, and stole evidence from police lockup. They found the evidence that I had planted, found that it had DNA from the lead investigator, and were about to kill him for me. Shadowrun encourages secret out-of-game communication with the GM and creates really cool stories in ways other games aren't built for. Oh, and I mentioned paranoia earlier. Hero may have been one of the most paranoid runners I've ever played with. He had a detailed layout of each of his 3 safe houses, notations on where a dozen or so lethal traps were placed and exactly what triggered those traps. He managed to kill an entire team of enemy operatives when they opened the doors into grenade clusters and the 2070s equivalent of sarin gas. 7-7 for people who know what it is. In our current game, a runner named Sherlock and the GM have spent literal days role-playing in private chats. I don't really know what goes on in there, but Sherlock is paranoid to his core and mistrusts every single person in the party. I happen to know that he spied on a perfectly innocuous lunch the party role-played out. That was a fun scene too. So you've just heard me gush about Shadowrun for forever and a day. Now let me tell you why it's terrible. First off, I can't say that every edition of Shadowrun is terrible. I've only played 5th edition, and I've read some 2nd edition, heard a lot about 6th. Maybe 3rd and 4th are fine, I don't know. Hold up, quick thing. I don't like a lot of the art in 5th edition. Not all of it is bad, and this is a relatively minor problem, but I can show the art when I'm not showing anything else. Just look at all of the faces here. Something is wrong with them. Also, I can't tell what's happening in a lot of these scenes, and what each person's motivation is. Alright, back to the more important bits. As far as I know, a running joke in the Shadowrun community is, editors? What editors? All 5th edition books are excessively annoying to get through. Okay, here's an example. How does one fire a gun? That seems like a simple thing to do, and a number of archetypes really need to know this, so it should be in a few simple rule segments, right? Nope! Here was my experience with guns in Shadowrun. Alright, let's look at the gun catalog. This gun looks nice. These are its stats. What does RC mean? Why are there 2 numbers in accuracy? What is AP? Does it mean armor piercing, and is negative better or worse? What do the modes SA, BF, FA, and SS mean? Alright, I want to put a smart gun link on it because I read that'll make it more accurate. Will that give it an accuracy of 7 or 9 or something else? Okay, a little bit later. Okay, the lore section of the Ares Alpha says it has an underbarrel grenade launcher, smart gun system, and 2 points of recoil compensation. Okay, that's probably what RC stands for, but what does it do? Okay, let's read how to use guns. Table of contents. Using pistol skill. It should be near that. Okay, so it's an automatic, There are no rules here, and no pointer to actual rules. Okay, let's try that again. Combat section, there's no fire a gun header, but there is a subheader that says it's under complex actions. Fire long burst or semi-auto burst, go to page 424. And a whole bunch about multiple attacks I'll read later. Oh, we're back to the gun catalog. Okay, back to 167, and see what we can find around here. Okay, the combat actions table says that calling a shot is a free action. Firing a weapon's SA, SS, BF, or FA is a simple action, and firing a weapon FA is a complex action. Firing a weapon full auto is a complex and simple action? Okay. Oh, goody, ranged combat. I wish I'd seen this first. From here on out, it's relevant rules, and rules that would be implemented if the GM had a perfect memory. I mean, who's gonna remember glare rules and wind modifiers? I didn't remember when reading this that firing from a moving vehicle had a penalty. Huh. Alright, let's look at some other stuff. Skills. Skills are explained on page 52 and 88 and enumerated in depth from page 128 to 151 without providing cases, examples, or references to use cases and examples for most of them. Matrix skills start on 226, rigging skills on 265, and magic skills on 278. Why, oh why, are they split up like this? Shouldn't they be separated into use cases? If you read too long, you'll see that there are rules in the lore without rules, and mismatched rules to lore. Shadowrun is a rules-heavy semi-simulationist game. Frequently, Shadowrun will put crucial game information in the middle of a section of lore with no separation between the two, lore and rules. The fingertip compartment Cyberware goes from relevant lore to rules, back to lore, more rules, more lore, and more rules. That is a particularly bad example, but that general idea happens a lot and makes it incredibly hard to find anything in the book. We saw this earlier with guns. The gun information was split between the lore segment and the chart. The Ares Lightfire 70 has a killer silencer, but you'd never know that unless you read through all of the lore. So, a vehicle in the game, the Ford Americar, is described as the most anonymous way to ferry people from place to place. There are rules for concealing objects and being noticed wearing the wrong clothes at social events, but there are no rules for how flashy a car is. So, driving up to your house with a race car is just as flashy as an Americar, according to the rules. This isn't a huge problem for me, since good game masters will know the lore behind the Americar and that it is ubiquitous and unmemorable. Good game masters will implicitly use rules for how obvious or out-of-place a vehicle is and treat race cars as highly suspicious. Mismatched rules and lore happen with most tabletop games, but they still shouldn't. For instance, the photographic memory quality gives you a +2 dice to memory tests, but the lore says that you remember everything within the last 6 months perfectly. Which is it? Because +2 dice barely makes a dent to memory tests. Remember how I said it was nearly impossible to figure out how to fire a gun in 5th edition? It still is if you want to fire more than one shot. You can fire up to strength divided by 3, rounded up, +1, plus your gun's recoil compensation modifier shots, before recoil starts affecting your aim. If you fire more than that many bullets, subtract the additional number of bullets from your die pool you use while shooting before you fire. Recoil carries over from turn to turn, so if you were 3 bullets above your recoil compensation for last turn, you start shooting at a -3 dice to your 2 hit pool. And you either have to spend half your turn doing something else other than shooting, or shoot with 3 fewer dice. Shadowrun requires you to purchase a lifestyle at character creation, and threatens consequences for being a squatter or on the street. I recently asked another player, "What do you think lifestyles do?" I believe his answer was that they mainly had a narrative function. Not so! Lifestyles affect what type of gear you can keep without it getting stolen, how big of a garage you can have, how quickly you heal injuries, how much stun damage you have to remove per day as a result of bad hygiene and bad food. They affect how easy it is to get certain goods and services, and change what matrix grid you interact with. I don't blame him or the GM for not knowing these rules, because none are explained well in the lifestyle section. It absolutely sucks that a game about crawling up from the gutter with paranoia, lies, and violence wouldn't properly explain the gutter you're crawling up from or the penthouse you want to get to. I've also run into weird rules edge cases. Sometimes that can't be helped, but it should be minimized as frequently as possible. I wanted to build a brain-in-a-jar rigger that interacted with the world through a particularly lifelike humanoid drone. This concept caused a feast of problems. Drones like this are human-shaped, and thus can wear armor, but the drone already has an armor stat. So am I allowed to add an armor jacket to that, or does the armor jacket replace the drone's armor? Probably the second, since the rule is you can only have one source of armor on at a time, but it could be the first if you treat the drone's armor like the armor you get from Cyberware. Also, if the drone is firing a gun, do I use my automatic skill because I am a person firing a gun, or the gunnery skill because I am rigging a drone firing a gun? I don't know. Also, I'm not technically allowed to make the brain-in-a-jar character work well at all. You'd think that a brain could control drones well, right? Nope. The quadriplegic quality I took to make a brain-in-a-jar says that all physical attributes are set to 0. Reaction, the attribute used to pilot drones, is a physical attribute. So the concept of a guy in a wheelchair or a brain-in-a-jar interacting with the world through robots, which is a relatively common sci-fi trope, you just can't do. The sucker punch is that this would have worked in previous editions because reaction wasn't a physical stat back then. If there are any Shadowrun veterans watching this, you may be wondering why I left a couple categories out of my original description of the game. The main reason I didn't mention Adepts and Mystic Adepts in the Archetypes was because they are different ways of filling other roles. Adepts are good faces, infiltrators, and uncybered street samurai. After doing additional power gaming and finding additional exploits with my pals, they appear to be better at decking and rigging too. The second reason I neglected Adepts and Mystic Adepts is because I hate everything they are and stand for. First off, an explanation. Adepts have magically gifted physical abilities. They can throw cars, shoot with superhuman accuracy, or move with actually unrivaled lightning speed, just like Sam's. Adept powers also let them shape facial features like clay, perfectly mimic voices or other sounds, temporarily or permanently boost an ability or skill, and make you so ninja you can run across water or snow without leaving ripples or footprints. Most of the crucial upgrades you can get through Adept powers are just better versions of what you could get through Cyberware. The Adept's existence completely removes the need for Cyberware in major roles, downplaying one of the core aspects of the game in the Shadowrun universe. Let's look at an example of how Adept's magic is mechanically just cheaper than Cyber for Street Samurai. One of the important things in this game is combat, and because of the aforementioned initiative system, you want really good initiative. This is not the only way to build a samurai, it may not even be the best way, but it should demonstrate the power imbalance. Unfortunately, in order to understand what is cheap and what isn't at character generation, you will need to understand the priority table. The main way to generate a character, as is written in the core book, is to choose meta-type, attributes, magical resonance, skills, and resources, each at one priority level A, B, C, D, E. Adept samurai should make their magic their priority B, and cyber samurai should make their priority A in resources. A is a person's most important area at character creation, and B is their second most important area. Adepts can't get better than priority B magic. Having priority B gives you 6 in your magic rating, the maximum, and gives adepts 6 power points to spend. It's also important to note that each character has 6 essence, which is how much soul you have left. Every time you add Bioware or Cyberware into your body, you lose some essence, except for an exploit I'm going to talk about later. Every time you lose a point of essence, the best you can do in social situations lowers because of lore reasons, and your magic score diminishes if you have it. Oh, and one last thing I need to explain. During character generation, the rarest gear you can buy is gear with an availability rating of 12. R and F don't matter right now. Let's get the same ability with Adept Magic and Cyber to see which one's better. With the Adept power Improved Reflexes at level 3, you spend 3.5 power points to get plus 3 to your reaction attribute and plus 3d6 initiative. Okay? Cool. Now, if you're building a Street Samurai correctly, you should probably start with 450,000 new yen. But we're going to choose B for a fair comparison, because that's what the Adepts get. If you choose B, you get 275,000. In order to get plus 3 reaction and plus 3d6 initiative, like with Improved Reflexes, with Cyberware, you need to buy level 3 Wired Reflexes. Level 3 Wired Reflexes cost 217,000 new yen and 5 of your 6 essence. Oh wait! You can't get it at character creation because it has an availability of 20. Sure, you could spend 10 karma, which is worth about 20,000 nuyen, to ignore that, but you can only do that once at character creation. Losing 5 points of essence means you can't add much more cyberware to you before you just fall apart. Okay, there's another way to increase your reaction and initiative with Bioware. Let's look at the Synaptic Booster. It costs 255,000 nuyen, 1.5 essence, and is also rare enough we have to take a restricted gear quality, like with Wired Reflexes. Even if you choose priority A for money, it still costs about half of your total resources and prevents resources from going where they should. So, Cyberware and Bioware both take more resources from the player than Adept magic and require outside assistance to be purchased at character creation. As a side note, rules as written, there is no way to upgrade Bioware or Cyberware. You just have to take it out and replace it with a better version, wasting the money you spent earlier. I have not found a single instance where the Cyberware or Bioware version of an Adept power is better or uses less resources. The False Face Cyberware lets you change your appearance within your metatype and is painful, replacing your face with thousands of tiny movable ceramic plates. This is bad compared to the Facial Sculpt Adept power that allows outside metatype changes in facial features. Getting a super nose, called an olfactory booster, costs 24,000 nuyen at max rating. Now, the sensor section is very hard for me to understand, but I believe to get the same capabilities, but outside of your nose, costs 600 nuyen. Mystic Adepts are borked too. The short is that Mystic Adepts can do everything Magicians and Adepts can do, except astrally project. The only penalty is a karma detriment that's fixed in about 2 to 3 play sessions. There are a lot of things in the rules that they just didn't see that they would conflict, and they do, and it's horrible. Notably, the Chameleon Suit is a piece of armor that gives you +2 or +4 dice to sneaking tests, depending on your position and how fully covered you are. It does this using technobabble, specifically something called ruthenium polymer. This makes you look like a cloaked predator from Predator. In the supplemental book Run and Gun, there is a familiar-sounding upgrade called ruthenium polymer coating. This reduces the ability for anyone to see you by a number of dice. There is no reason, rules as written, that you can't add the ruthenium polymer coating upgrade to a chameleon suit, which is already covered in ruthenium polymer. That's really dumb! There was another time they said, rule's too complicated, let's just throw it out. Trolls, who are significantly bulkier and ganglier than humans or other metatypes, have a 100% increase to lifestyle costs and had a 20% increase to gear costs to replicate the increase in expenses in a world where virtually nothing is built for you. Because some gear is specifically made large enough for trolls, they added a gear tag called Metahuman Adaptation that meant you didn't have to pay extra for it. Mind you, this tag was added sometime after the core rulebook came out, and before that you just had to read the item's description to see whether it was built for trolls or not. However, during an errata, the people who wrote the game just decided, nah, we don't like that rule, and got rid of the extra 20% gear cost. Because of this, anything with the Metahuman Adaptation tag is now just a worse item for everyone. Gear with the Metahuman Adaptation is just as expensive to trolls as gear without the tag, but more expensive to everyone else, because they have to spend money to modify it back. So that sucks. It does get worse though. Sometimes they just don't write the information down. A ram plate is like a cow catcher or stop bar you put in the front of a vehicle to make the thing it's running into get hurt more. A ram plate is considered a vehicle weapon modification. Notice anything missing right about here? Yup! They just forgot to put it in, even when they describe it in detail 2 pages earlier. Also, just looking at this formatting here, how did this get printed? Here's another thing that developers obviously didn't think through. The ammo skip system. The ammo skip system is an upgrade that can be added to guns with drum magazines or revolver-style cylinders. The ammo skip system allows players to hold multiple types of ammo in the same mag and switch between them with a free action, so the gun can behave kinda like Judge Dredd's Lawgiver. I think this is awesome, and wanted to do exactly that. So just find a gun with a drum magazine or wheel gun, and that's it, right? Not exactly. You see, the ammo skip system can only be added to guns that have an available underbarrel mount, according to the rule here that they didn't put with the rest of the stuff. Handguns and submachine guns don't have space for an underbarrel mount, so no pistols qualify in this upgrade. There are only 5 guns that can have this mod. the Enfield AS-7 shotgun, the Krupp Arms Kriegerfaust assault rifle, which can only be used by trolls because of the aforementioned metahuman customization option, the Crime Boss shotgun, that also has metahuman customization, the Auto Assault 16 shotgun, and the Terracotta X6 MGL grenade launcher. They must not have thought through this modification, because adding a modification that only works with 5 guns and 3 for most metatypes in a game with over 120 guns is an incredibly bad move. This is especially true when the underbarrel modification slot requirement removes so many revolvers from the list. I mean, you added cylinders for a reason, and then you completely made it so it didn't work with most cylinder guns. Onto the skill list. Like almost all tabletop RPGs, Shadowrun has a list of skills that detail how good your character is at certain things. Not all of these skills are treated equally, though. For instance, diving. The diving skill has never been used once in any campaign I've been in, seen, or heard of. It is also separate from the swimming skill, but diving encompasses swimming underwater, so it is theoretically easy to build a character that cannot swim on the surface of water, but can swim well beneath it. Sure. Other skills pull triple duty. Gymnastic is used for gymnastics, dodging attacks, climbing, jumping, and rappelling. Another interesting thing is that increasing the running and swimming speeds does not actually increase your normal movement while running or swimming in combat. You can spend your turn sprinting to gain minimal extra distance, though. Let's just talk about jamming for a moment. Even if you have a ludicrous amount of jamming, the rules don't specify you can't do matrix actions. They just say that you have to roll a 5 or a 6. So even if you have military grade jamming, you can technically still get messages through that. It's just really hard to do. This worked in previous editions because they had different rules for jamming, and if the jamming was powerful enough, you just couldn't get anything through. 4th edition, I don't know why people don't like it. Oh, now for the fun exploits. I'll start off with some of the ones that I'm most familiar with. The biocompatibility quality was not properly thought through. For taking this really inexpensive quality, you can reduce essence costs from Cyberware or Bioware, pick one not both, by 10% and round down to the nearest tenth. A metric ton of upgrades cost 0.1 essence or less, making them free for those who have this quality. So, a person can have data jack, data lock, flare compensation, image link, retinal duplication, thermographic vision, vision enhancement, vision magnification, audio enhancement, balance augmenter, damper, select sound filter, sound link, spatial recognizer, and a literal infinite number of laser-sighted, silenced holdout pistols. Going on to non-core books, you can get cosmetic surgery, resizable breast implants, LED tattoos, fiber optic hair, steamers, 3 antennae, audio analyzer, ear protector, increased spectrum hearing, modular mount, perfect for pistols and pencils, translate ear, eye light system, eye protectors, a rating 1 skill jack, Dreamlink, math SPU, SynthLink, visualizer, voice mask, every type of auto injector, biomonitor, cyber fins, touchlink, 10 cyber fingers, fangs. And that's just the Cyberware, screw you, I'm not doing Bioware. So with this, you can get more than half a person in Cyberware stuck almost entirely in your head for no essence cost. And that leads me to my favorite and most brutal game hack, arbitrary damage. Let's give you some context. A max strength troll wielding a mace made out of the heaviest metal known to man will do about 20 damage. Which is more lethal than an anti-material Gauss rifle, by the way. There is a way to do over 900 damage at character creation using the rules as they are written. The Striking Callus is a Bioware upgrade that adds a little bit of hardened skin to various striking surfaces on your body to increase your unarmed attack damage. Each treatment costs 0.05 essence, which biocompatibility rounds down to 0. And there is no limit to how many times you can take this augmentation. Money is the only limiting factor to how many of these you can have, and it's cheap. Is this rules intended? Heck no! Would I ever actually use this in a game? Also heck no! Oh, as a quirk of the rules, unarmed attacks do stun damage without augmentations or gear, so this would send a person to the moon, but would do nothing more than dent a vehicle because vehicles cannot take stun damage. Meh. I mentioned how I loved the lore earlier, and I still do. However, the reason I always described finding tidbits is because there is no centralized place for lore. The wiki helps, but it isn't updated, has too many unfiltered pages or stubs, and more dead links than a kindergartner's hard mode Zelda playthrough. In order to learn much about Miami and the Caribbean League, where our game took place, our GM had to look through the Shadowrun 4th edition almanac and a whole bunch of non-canon user-generated content. And there's 6 editions spanning 30 years now. There's so much info out there, and no way to know it but read thousands of pages, which I should refuse to do. Even in the books, the lore is dispersed through narrative. It's, I guess, a cushy way to learn and kind of fun, but when I want to learn things more than be entertained by a narrative, I'll read a textbook. I want specific and concise lore textbooks, not meandering chat forums and quippy conversations. Thanks, but I don't want to hear your opinion again, Slammo. I will say, 2nd edition had an incredibly clear and mostly comprehensive lore dump at the beginning. There has been too much since then for that to really apply, but it's still nice knowing the world's early history. Here's some minor pet peeves. Traditional ball and stick prosthetics don't cost any essence. The way essence loss was described in 2nd edition was damage to the central nervous system as well as the soul. I get why prosthetics like this don't cost essence. Saying that they did would mean that handicapped people who use prosthetics are less human than others because they spent some of their soul integrating chrome into their body. But really, we're all cyborgs and have been since we picked up sticks as tools. It's either that or since we did dental work. If you made it this far, you should read Donna Haraway's Cyborg manifesto. It's pretty neat. There is a hesitant consensus among some groups that the middle third of magic, summoning, binding, and banishing spirits, will rarely be done by the party and sparingly by the GM, just because spirits are so powerful. They're broken. I'm sure a lot of groups use and fight spirits, but they're so gosh darn powerful that groups just kinda ignore that section of the rules. Video's over. This is YouTube. Remember to rate 5 stars.